The time is now 6 p.m. Our regular City Council meeting for June 20th is now in session. Mayor Pro Tem Brown will lead us with the opening prayer and the pledges of allegiance to the flags of the United States and the state of Texas. Please rise.
Good evening. Heavenly Father, we gather this evening to take action to help our city grow with solid infrastructure, a sound budget, and a strong community focused on our greater good. We thank you for the abundance of amenities we enjoy with good water, reliable energy, and a phenomenal Parks and Rec department. We ask that you guide us to provide our employees and our first responders with leadership, support, and compensation that will attract and retain the best in our quest. And we ask that you protect all of our citizens and workforce with good health and well-being. In your name we pray. Amen. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We'll start off with a proclamation. We have the National Parks and Recreation Month for July 2023, and Councilmember Davis will read us a proclamation. If I can please have the representatives for Parks and Recreation join us up here, please.
Park and Recreation Month, July 2023. Whereas Parks and Recreation is an integral part of communities throughout this country, including the city of Schertz, and whereas Parks and Recreation promotes health and wellness, improving the physical and mental health of people who live near parks, and whereas Parks and Recreation promote time spent in nature, which positively impacts mental health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being, and alleviating illnesses such as depression, attention deficit disorders, and Alzheimer's. And whereas Parks and Recreation encourages physical activities by providing space for popular sports, hiking trails, swimming pools, and many other activities designed to promote active lifestyles. And whereas Parks and Recreation is a leading provider of healthy meals, nutrition services, and education. And whereas Parks and Recreation programming and education activities, such as out-of-school time programming, youth sports, and environmental education, are critical to childhood development. And whereas Parks and Recreation increases a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas Parks and Recreation is fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community. And whereas Parks and Recreation is essential and adaptable infrastructure that makes our communities resilient in the face of natural disasters and climate change. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, and whereas the city of Schertz recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources, now therefore Ralph Gutierrez, Mayor of Schertz, does hereby proclaim July 1st through 31st, 2023 National Park and Recreation Month in the city of Schertz, and calls upon the residents of this city to observe this month by getting out and enjoying the beautiful parks in the city of Schertz.
Good evening. I'm Lauren Strum, Parks and Recreation Director for the City of Schertz. I just want to thank all these individuals up here. It takes every single one of them to make this department go round. We've got staff here. We've also got volunteers. These professionals make a positive impact on the lives of the community members every single day. For example, they literally make things grow. Hence our flowers tonight. They plant flowers, trees, maintain irrigation systems, maintain trails, over 450 acres of parkland, medians, public campuses. They put up street banners. They put up our Christmas tree. They decorate our city. They paint, fix fences, put up pergolas, anything you can think of, these folks are doing it. Our recreation folks plan special events for the community and bring the community together. Our adult social leagues, our 4th of July Jubilee coming up, movies in the park, nature education, all those things bring out thousands of people in the community together. Our Civic Center and Community Center folks provide spaces for the community to gather and celebrate life's events. So everybody here has a critical role in quality of life here in the city of Schertz. I want to thank them. We also have our volunteers. We've got Parks Advisory Board member here, Brad Snow. We've got representatives from Buffalo Valley Youth Association. They serve over 1,700 youth in baseball, softball, basketball, volleyball, and swimming in the community. We've got representatives here from SISA as well. They serve over 1,000 youth in soccer in Schertz. Also wanted to note our YMCA partners who couldn't be here tonight, but they manage the Rec Center, Aquatic Center, and Senior Center, and they impact the community greatly. And then all the folks who couldn't be here tonight that are part of our Parks and Rec community, our Senior Center Advisory Board, Friends of Crescent Bend Nature Park, the Girl Scouts, BSA Scouts, San Antonio Astronomical Association, Master Gardeners, and Master Naturalists. I hope I didn't forget anybody, but it takes a huge amount of people to make Parks and Rec happen in this community, and we thank you all. So thank you guys.
If you take a closer look at those shirts, the biggest word you see on there is fun. You know, we all live a stressful life, and having fun can reduce some of that stress. I've heard so many comments about our baseball fields, our soccer fields, and just the number of people that go out there. It is noteworthy to say that you guys are doing an excellent job with the number of parks that we have and everybody, the fields, the parks. We have the 4th of July coming up. We couldn't do it without our Parks and Recreation. Thank you all so much. All right, we'll move on. We have a presentation on the 2023 TMIA Awards.
There we go. All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Devin Christensen, the Communications Manager for the Public Affairs Department. And we're here with Kanan Gibbons, our Marketing and Communications Specialist, and Linda Klepper, our Public Affairs Director, to present on the 2023 TAMIO Awards. So We recently attended the TAMIO conference in Arlington on June 8th, and we submitted 5 award entries this year for the awards, and we were finalists in 2 of those categories. And there was a total of 547 entries total across the state. And so the 2 awards that we were given was the Award of Honor, which is 3rd place for our Schertz magazine and that new redesign that we did back in November. And this was one of our comments from the judges. The publication is clearly laid out with informative news and photos to show pride in the local community. Nicely done. So that was one of our awards. And then we won the TAMI Award, which is our 1st place award for our Schertz Fire Rescue recruitment flyer. And this one, another comment from the judges as well. A well-designed flyer which clearly stated the job details, pay and benefits information. And based off of the results achieved, the flyer was beneficial for recruiting for the organization. So, and that's all we have.
Well, congratulations. Yeah, the magazine has always been one of those beauties that we have, and the residents love that magazine. Very well laid out. The photos especially, I mean, those, the front cover, very impressive. Thank you all ladies so much. Appreciate it. And congratulations. Council, did any of you have any comments? All right. Yeah. That's right. All right, we'll move on to city events and announcements. Announcements of upcoming city events. Mr. James.
Thank you, Mayor. We have quite a few this time. So this Saturday, June 24th, we have Float and Flick in the Park. It's at the Pickerel Park Pool. Starts at 7 p.m., runs till 9 p.m. And that is very exciting, Hotel Transylvania 3 Summer Vacation. A very good one. There's some romance in it, a lot of humor. It's a very good with Hotel Transylvanias. Friday, June 30th, we have Project Flagline. That was something started a few years ago to line Schertz Parkway with the flags before the 4th of July. Folks who want to volunteer can sign up at Schertz.com, 4th of July Jubilee volunteer activities. But that's over 4,000 flags, so we appreciate all the help that we can get. Generally, we start at 7:30, runs till about 9:30. City offices are closed on Monday, July 3rd, Tuesday, July 4th, and that's because of 4th of July and Jubilee. So that kicks off with the Let Freedom Ring or Let Freedom Run. 5K starts promptly at 9:15. So be there, Steve, ready to run. Don your best patriotic gear, run along the parade route with folks cheering. This is the 11th year we've done that. And again, you can register at Schertz.com. Parade begins at 9:30. Again, nonprofit groups, folks, welcome to sign up for that. Kids Carnival opens at 11 at Thulemeyer. Float and Fireworks is 6 to 10 p.m. Live music with Groove Night begins at 6 p.m. And then the fireworks show begins about 9:15. Again, bring blankets, lawn chairs, things like that to Pickerel Park, and that is sponsored by HEB. And then again, if you enjoyed that, we appreciate you coming back out. This is, I guess, like Christmas. Everybody likes putting up the tree. Nobody likes taking down the tree. But we could use volunteers on Thursday the 6th, again, 7:30 to help take those flags back down. And again, they can register online to volunteer. Saturday, July 8th, Nature Discovery Series, Discover Clues and Traces. That's at Crescent Bend from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And then we're back here with you again with council. July 11th, Tuesday. Again, it's not our normal 1st and 3rd because of the 4th, so we're back on Tuesday, July 11th.
Thank you, Mr. James. We have a small debate over here at the Parks and Recreation as to how many flags we actually put out. And my calculations, based on it's a 3-mile run from one end to the other, times 2, it's 55,280 flags. And
Clear, I stand corrected. It says over 4,000. I
That's-
mistakenly said 4,000. Likely, I will find myself out there Thursday taking all of them down, just so I don't forget that.
And our city manager, he said he'll run the 5K, he'll show up at 9:30.
At
All
least
right.
by 9:30.
Announcements and recognitions by our city manager, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. Last week, we had the Junior Fire Academy for the junior high and high school kids, and they learned about hazmat response, rope rescue, fire streams, vehicle extrication, fire prevention, pumping operations, thermal imaging, fire extinguisher training, and fire chemistry 101. There were 17 high school kids and 15 junior high kids that participated, and they had their graduation on Friday, June 9th. Sounds like an exciting program to participate in. In May, we had a few promotions. We had Benjamin Potts moved from paramedic in EMS to EMS field training officer. And we had Ryan Wilson moved from EMS field training officer up to lieutenant. And Michael Corner went from part-time EMT to part-time paramedic. And lastly, we had Rodolfo Rosales. He went from our assistant utility billing manager to utility billing manager. One more thing, last week we had a TML held a legislative wrap-up last Thursday, and it was a workshop, a half-day workshop in Georgetown. We had several people in attendance, Councilwoman Hayward, Brian Sand, Sarah, Linda Klepper, Lisa Wood, and I were all there, and they went through all the legislation that made it through both houses, and as well as the ones that are currently being discussed in the the special session, as well as the ones that the governor had vetoed at that point. So we're keeping an eye on how the rest of that plays out, and look forward to moving forward with that. As you know, Linda Klepper, who was just here, is now our legislative affairs point person, did an excellent job this year. We're looking forward to 2 years from now. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, and congratulations to our staff on your promotions. All right, we'll move on. Next is the hearing the residents. This time is set aside for any person who wishes to address the city council. Each person is limited to 3 minutes, and we ask before addressing the council, for the record, please state your name and address. Mayor Pro Tem, please call our first speaker.
Be Daniel Jameson.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I just want to say, I want to commend the Public Works for coming out and mowing the easements between the yards of the back fences over there in our community. You know, with a lot of the senior citizens in that area, you know, it's hard for them to get out and cut their yards. And for the city to come out and do that for the senior citizens, I want to thank you, Mr. Williams, for affording your team to do that and assigning them for that. They did a beautiful job. We look forward to having them do it again in the near future. And also for the fathers, I want to say Happy Father's Day, even though it's late. And for the Army veterans, thank you and for your service, because on June the 4th, on 14th, when we had Flag Day, the idea of putting the flags out, line the driveway, line the sidewalk and the street with them, my dad said, do it. So we did it, and they're going to stay up even through the 4th. So there's an idea for the future if you want to anybody wants to take a look at it. Once again, thank you for your service. Look forward to seeing y'all at the 4th of July celebration. Thank you.
Next up, Maggie Titterington.
Good evening, Council. As some of you who attended the luncheon found out today, tomorrow is our 18-year anniversary of being a Chamber of Commerce. Our history, and I won't go through it all because it's very long, but we originally had our roots established in 1974. We were the Schertz Business Club, and it started with a handful of local businesses, Schertz Bank and Trust included in that, and they were meeting in each other's homes, storefronts, and everything. And from that, it began to grow as Schertz began to grow, and then they changed their name to the Schertz Business Association because it sounded more professional. Well, it continued to grow, and by the early 2000s, the businesses had an opportunity to step out and become a full-fledged Chamber of Commerce. And so 29 member businesses took up that challenge, and in 2005, June 21st, 2005, we became the Schertz Chamber of Commerce. In 2016, in talks with the city of Schertz and Cibolo and Selma, they all three agreed that to really adequately say who we were as a Chamber of Commerce for the area, we changed our name to the Chamber for Schertz, Cibolo, and Selma area. And so now when we started with this at 29 members, we are now almost 600 business members. Our business members extend throughout 20 cities and 10 counties. So that's pretty big. And so some people ask me, well, if I don't live in Schertz or Cibolo or Selma, why would I want to be a part of the Chamber? I've had to stop answering that question because they just look at our area, at our cities, and they see the growth and the potential and the businesses coming, and they come in and they want to join. It's not why would we join, it's not why would we not want to join. And so what I had announced at our luncheon, out of those 29 original members, 16 are still with us. The other 12 have unfortunately either gone out of business or the owners have passed away. And then out of the original 7 board directors, 5 are still remaining as well with our chamber. So I think that speaks highly, the city of Schertz being one of them, speaks very highly about the support that we have had in partnership with the city of Schertz to start us. We couldn't have done it without your support and the support of those businesses. And so I want to thank you all for that and your continued support. Also, we are working hard at our visitor's guide, working with Linda and her team, as well as the other cities to produce a really good, another award-winning, hopefully, guide for next year. But we are in the works of doing that. And then next Friday, we're starting, instead of coffee at the chamber, because I can't even think of anything hot. I'm hot right now thinking about it. We're doing our summer smoothie celebration. So Tropical Smoothie right there on 35 has offered to give out free smoothies from 7:30 to 9 for our chamber members. So please stop by. The first one is next Friday on the 30th. And other than that, all of our ribbon cuttings, we have about 5 or 6 a month. They're all on our event calendar, and then we try to send out heads up for you all to attend at your will. Thank you so much.
And next up, we have Maureen Moss and Richard Moss for combined 6 minutes.
Richard Moss, 3434 Wimbledon Drive, Schertz, Texas. I've been a resident there for 32 years. First, I would like to thank the city administration for your time and for providing video documentation of meetings and online versions of the current Unified Development Code, or UDC. I've given you a copy of a couple of the sections of the UDC that I will be referring to. Due to time constraints, not all content is written, but I've noted where you can refer to the full text. I'd like to give you some of my background. I worked in aircraft maintenance with 3 major airlines for over 40 years. We were expected to know current FAA regulations as they pertain to each aircraft, have all documents in our possession, and make sure they were correct and up to date before we started any task. That is what I tried to do in looking at PLPDD 20230093, the villas at Bluebonnet Ridge. Since city building project affects so many people on a permanent basis, I would expect the city management would adhere to the UDC, look very carefully at any variances, and expect a complete application before approval. So that is where I'm going to start. UDC Section 21.510A, Plan Development Districts. A PDD should not be used to deviate from the provisions of a UDC in a way that contradicts its intent. Simply put, base requirements of a development district should adhere to base zoning wherever possible. As I understand it, people refer to PDDs as having a lot of leeway with the rules, but the UDC requirement of a PDD application are quite clear. The next item, which I'm going to spend most of my time with, is UDC Section 21.510D, Development Standards. All applications shall list all requested variances from the standard requirements set forth throughout this UDC. Applications without this list will be considered incomplete. Again, it is pretty simple. The applicant provides a list of all variances so anyone can easily find and understand what the items are that the applicant does not want to comply with. The city staff knows exactly what the applicant is asking for regarding base zoning and all variances. And anyone affected who wants to look at the application, the residents, commissioners, council members, utility workers, fire, police, can easily see what the requested variances are. It doesn't say create a narrative word puzzle that most people don't understand or have to weed through a 35-page document to find the list of variances. I will try to lead you through the mess created by the city staff approving an incomplete PDD application without the required list of variances. When the staff member was asked why there wasn't a list on the application, the general answer was, this is the way we have done previous PDDs. In other words, it appears the staff member was not trained in UDC Section 21.5.10D Development Standards. This is the way we've always done it, is not a good practice. And now I will go to the June 14th, 2023 P&Z meeting. I've given you guys all the links to that because I can't, in my 3 minutes, go through the whole thing. So anyways, it has the times and what is stated per the text at the bottom. First off, at 1 hour and 6 minutes, Mr. Benson, I did want to say in terms of the application that a lot was made about our application and how it was. I mean, I'm going to defer to your staff on whether or not our application was complete. I mean, they said it was complete. We've worked off that regard. I do believe there was an impervious cover exhibit in our submission which has the information that some people have asked. So it is there. Mr. Broad, in the UDC, it says it has the minimum acreage of a gated community of 75 acres. How does this get around? How does this one get around that? Emily Delgado. So I would say that it is part of the PDD. Mr. Broad, is it listed as a variance anywhere? Delgado, no, sir, but it is identified that the property would be a gated community. As Mr. Outlaw said, I am not aware of a PDD that we had that bullet lists in the PDD design standard. It's in this narrative format. Mr. Broad, Section 2181B1 says minimum acreage requirements for a secured gated community shall be 75 acres. That's a hard requirement. Delgado, I would say we would add that into the PDD design standard to make it clear, but ultimately what is being proposed is that it's a gated community, and that's being identified in the design standard. Mr. Outlaw, if it deviates from the UDC, then it should be noted in the PDD. So if the UDC says minimum of 70 acres, somewhere in this PDD, it should say that the UDC is this, and we are proposing this, and we are proposing just like all the other things we have done. We're doing a PDD because for some reason development doesn't fit, whether that's one thing or 10 things. But again, as pointed out, I think anything that deviates from the UDC should be spelled out somewhere in the PDD itself. Mr. Outlaw, well, and then I have to wonder if we've stumbled across something. What else is, and he catches himself. Mr. Hector, and this is for staff, just simply of your perspective, are the standards being followed to the letter, right, so complete transparency? Because I think that's one thing that I am not necessarily clear on, but from your perspective for the residents, because I've heard some different points of view or understanding on what's written, UDC versus the PDD, or whatever the standards are being followed. Ms. Delgado, so I will answer it this way. I would say staff, I know there has been a question if this was a complete application. Staff did deem this was complete application. That's why it was made through this process. And here before the commission tonight, and then we go back to the Chairman Outlaw's point earlier, staff feels the written narrative does meet the intent of the list of modifications. But as we noticed, she was asked a simple yes/no question, and she leads with, "So I will answer it this way." Mr. Hector, I guess my only question is that we typically do that, make changes. We typically do that, make the changes, post the application, and then, application, as opposed to making sure that the application meets the standard up front. Ms. Delgado. So I will say we deem an application complete if it's an initial review. And you can all read this, I mean, it just keeps on going. And all PDD applications shall list all requested variances from the standard requirements set forth in the UDC. Applications without this list shall be considered incomplete. And Mr. Hector, as a citizen, then, if I look and read the UDC for understanding, that would be my takeaway. Is just a guide, or it's just a hard, fast rule. Delgado, I would say the UDC is our rules and regulations. Mr. Hector, I just think as citizens of the community, it should be transparent. And I would have thought this would have been considered up front as opposed to later. And I agree with Commissioner Hector's statement denying this PDD. And that's how I feel as a citizen of the community. I feel that the interest of transparency, a full disclosure of this PDD should have been revised to conform with UDC Section 21-5-10 Plan Development Districts, and a complete list of variances included at the beginning of the application before it is accepted. This helps anyone that wants to look at the application to easily see what the variances are, whether they're resident, commissioner, whoever. What I'm asking for today is the PDD be revised to include a complete list of variances. Mr. Outlaw and Mr. Hector both said there's a need for transparency in this. There's also two items that I've given you in the 35-page document that are incorrect and should be corrected before it's pushed forward. I would hope that all of you council members want a PDD in front of you that was done completely and does not contain statements that are misleading or incorrect. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on. We have consent agenda items. These are considered self-explanatory, and information packets are provided to the council and available for public viewing. These items require no separate discussion unless requested by council. Item number 1, the minutes. Item number 2, resignations for boards, commissions, and committees. Item number 3, ordinance number 23T12. Item number 4, resolution number 23R53. Item number 5, resolution number 23R50. Item number 6, resolution number 23R49. Item number 7, resolution number 23R54. And item number 8, ordinance number 23S12. Council, do any of these need to be removed for separate action? Is there a motion to approve of consent agenda items 1 through 8?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Brown and second by Council Member Watson. Council, any other comments? All right. All right, Council, if you can please go ahead and cast your vote. Okay, all votes have been cast. If you can go ahead and publish the vote. It's not on that one, that's why. All right, there is 7 yeas, no objection, motion passes. If you can go ahead and record and confirm the vote. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item number 9. Resolution number 23R51, consideration or action by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, approving a resolution nominating a candidate to fill the vacancy of the Comel Appraisal District Board of Directors. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. Back on May 25th, the city received a letter from John Tyler, who's the chairman of the Comel Appraisal District Board, and they have a vacancy on their board, and the property tax code sets out the way those vacancies are filled. Essentially, the letter describes in there, it actually cites the tax code and the process for doing so. But in essence, what they have asked is that any entity that has the ability to vote in the elections for the board in Comal County, if there is someone that we have a desire to nominate to be selected by the current board to fill that vacant position for the remainder of the term that that position has, this would be the opportunity to do so by resolution. So the agenda item tonight is to ask if there is anyone on the council that would like to nominate somebody that you all could agree on via the resolution and pass that. If there's not, then it's not a problem, that we just don't take any action on the resolution.
All right, thank you, Mr. Williams. My understanding is this candidate, if it is, must reside in the Comal district.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Council, any nominations? Nope. Okay, no action needed. We'll move on then. Okay, we'll move on to item number 10, resolution number 23R52, consideration or action by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, approving a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the public sector personnel consultant to conduct a classification and compensation study. Ms. Schertz?
I'm going to lead off with a couple of
Okay.
comments, Mayor, before I hand it over to Jessica, and she'll cover the details. If you'll remember back on March 28th of this year, during the pre-budget workshop, I identified compensation as our #1 budget priority for the upcoming budget year. It's something that we struggle with every single day in our organization, the form of high vacancy rates and extremely high turnover rates. And it's something that during that meeting, I outlined a process or a plan to address that moving forward for the remainder of this fiscal year and the next fiscal year. It began with Jessica and her team doing a cursory survey. That was intended to give us the ability to develop a budget number to essentially plug into the budget moving forward. We're doing this knowing full well that that's just a number that we're going to shoot for to budget, and that it's an estimate at this point in time. The next step is to hire a consulting firm to do a full class and compensation study, and our hope was to begin that as quickly as possible and do it during this fiscal year, so we would have the results early next fiscal year and be able to implement any pay adjustments as early as possible in the next fiscal year. The agenda item that you have before you tonight is to hire the firm to do that compensation classification study. We're on an aggressive timeline. We expect that it'll take about 120 days to get this done and to get the final results. So we're shooting for, at the latest, a January 1st implementation of those adjustments. And we know that that number that we're putting in the budget might need to go up or down a little bit. We recognize. And just as a reminder, the plan also is that we would bring forward through our regular budget process an ECI adjustment that'll be implemented on October 1st. This is intended to help us keep pace with inflation and in addition to any adjustments that might come out of the study. I feel like this is a well thought out plan. And we're doing our due diligence to make sure that we are competitive in the market, and that's the intention of this, is to maintain a competitive position in the market. I know you've all heard me say several times to address this, it's kind of like a three-legged stool, and in addition to aggressive recruiting and raising the profile of our organization among the potential employee pool, compensation is a key component. We must address it. I'm going to turn it over to Jessica and see if she...
Well, you just saved me a lot of breath, Mr. Williams, so thank you. You hit a lot of the high points, but I'll just quickly go over the process thus far. So the city released a request for proposal for the services, and 3 proposals were received. The proposals were viewed and scored based on criteria including qualifications and experience, company operational information, cost, reputation, capability, resources, and project design and strategy. After initial review and evaluation of all the proposals, all 3 firms were invited to participate in an interview just so that they could further explain their methodologies and how they would go about approaching the study. Staff representatives from city management, human resources, police, and fire participated in the interview process and provided input on the final selection recommendation. So after the interviews were completed, the group unanimously recommended Public Sector Personnel Consultants, PSPC, for this project. PSPC's demonstrated competency in class and comp studies and superior knowledge of local government operations and Texas market conditions, we believe, make them the most qualified to meet the city's need on this critical project. The proposed contract has a not to exceed value of $60,000, and staff has identified funding and contingency in this fiscal year to fund the study, and so that we can begin immediately. As Mr. Williams said, just to reiterate, the goal is to have final results and an implementation plan in place that we can make adjustments effective January 1st. And as he mentioned also, we will be exploring in this budget process effective October 1, some other potential wage adjustments like ECI, which is a COLA-like inflation factor. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the council has.
Thank you. Okay, council, floor is open for discussion. Councilmember Scagliola.
Okay, it's probably no secret what I feel about studies. As an analyst, most of the time the answers depend upon the questions asked. And I don't understand why we feel the need to go out and ask people who really don't understand the dynamics of the city, what it is that makes the city so special. The other thing is, I looked at the grading criteria for this, and it's on page 91 of our package, and it looks like public sector personnel consultants. I don't know how the grading criteria works, but it doesn't look like they excelled in the primary dimensions that we're evaluating. So why is it they won the contract?
Sure.
And there's something wrong with the timeline. If we said we wanted to get it accomplished, I think their proposal was going to take longer than we anticipated, and the pricing, I don't see the 100,000, or I see a figure of 110,000 minus 50,000.
Yes, sir.
What's going on?
Yep, happy to answer those questions. So first, I'll tell you that while public sector personnel consultants has only worked with us on a limited basis in the past, they have vast knowledge and vast resources. They have a very deep bench in terms of working in Texas markets and understanding, again, cities the size of Dallas, all the way they're currently working with Live Oak. So they do understand local government very well, the operations and the personnel that support the operations. In terms of the initial proposal, public sector did have a value of 110,000. However, that included a couple of items that were outside of the scope of work and that were not included in the other 2 proposals. And those were the desk job audits, and so that's for their staff to physically come here. It included up to 200 audits, so to sit with our employees face to face and talk about jobs. And that was not something that was included in the scope or something that the other folks quoted. That alone, I think, had a $30,000 or $40,000 price tag associated with it, so we moved that out of the scope. We removed it. We asked public sector personnel to, following the interview, we asked them to provide a best and final offer that would mirror what the other folks had prepared in terms of the scope of work. And so 2 different things were removed from there, the job descriptions and the desk job audits, which brought the total value down to $60,000 as a best and final offer.
Okay, so that answers one of the questions, but my primary contention is we probably have 85% of the solution already, and this really isn't directed at you. This is more directed at our city manager. Care to explain how this strategy will get us to where we want to go versus telling us what we already know? What is your strategy behind that?
So the reason why you would do a comprehensive study like this is to identify the areas in our organization that might need to be addressed in a more aggressive fashion. There are certain areas that are experiencing higher turnover and higher vacancy rates than others. I mean, and so they may need a larger adjustment for certain positions than in other areas of the city. If we were to just do something across the board, that doesn't necessarily fix our problem. It may end up overcompensating some and not addressing the need for others. So the intention is develop a program and make sure that positions are slotted in the correct grades, et cetera, and make those adjustments. Now, I'll give you an example. There are certain positions. There's one in the engineering department. We're having difficulty hiring an engineer. We have 2 vacancies for that position. We made offers near the top of the pay range for that grade, almost at the top of the pay range, and they've been rejected because the top of the pay range for the city is 20, 30, 40,000 below what the private sector is offering for an entry level for that position. So that's what we're contending with. We're trying to ensure that we can do the best that we can to make our pay competitive with our marketplace. And I would say that it's important for us to understand who we're competing with and comparing ourselves to that marketplace. There are people that we are losing on a daily basis. I'll give you an example, another example, the police department. We are consistently losing positions to other departments in the immediate area. EMS, although they're fully staffed right now, their turnover rate is probably twice as high as every other department in the city. So it's critical that we get this right. And I'm supportive of hiring a consultant to do this because they have the expertise to develop an overall plan for compensation.
Mr. Williams?
Is that your whole question? Yeah, go ahead.
I would just, if I could tack on to that, you know, we tend to focus on the market survey piece of a class and comp study, but in reality, the study is so much broader. And what we're asking the consultant to look at is not only how we stack up and measure up to some of our competitors and local cities around us, but we're also asking them to, as he mentioned, just take a look at our overall compensation plan. So this will include benefits review. This will include an in-depth review at our pay structures. They'll provide recommendations on, you know, what we could do better, things that we might want to implement. In addition to that, there are several other compensation issues such as incentive pay, certification pay, things like that that we've long struggled with, kind of wrapping our arms around and really being effective in how we administer those programs. Additionally, the city has historically we've lacked a career progression or a job ladder, family job ladder, so that we can provide a pathway for employees to progress with the city. And so these are all things that the consultant will be looking at, and their expertise, is in these beyond my level, our level here at the city. So just some additional things that they'll be looking at.
Thank you. I didn't want to bog down too much, but I will say this. We are running a business, and we have to be competitive in our marketplace. And in order to run our business effectively, human resources is the #1 resource. 77% of our general fund is personnel-related cost. Personnel is what drives our organization, and we want to make sure that we have the best and brightest, we can attract the best and brightest, and also retain the best and brightest. I think our employees are extremely committed to their jobs, the ones that are here, and we want to build that environment that's a great place to work. At the same time, we want to make sure that the issue of pay is not something that's a constant irritation to the organization.
Additionally, if you'll recall, I guess about 2 years ago now, we pulled public safety out of the unified pay plan and placed them into their own pay plan. And that was a first for the city, and I think a great step in the right direction in terms of what industry standard is like. But we knew that that was just the first step and that we would need to re-review that. And so that's also one of the things that we'll be looking to the consultant is to provide some advice and recommendations on those public safety plans, things, again, that we can do better. So that was our first stab at it. And like I said, I think it was a good first step, but I think there's still more work to be done, in particular with those plans. So I look forward to that as well.
Yeah, that was the thing that was frustrating me a little bit. I know last year we kind of took a stab at it. It was a first step, but I didn't see the follow through. You know, where was the next step, the step after that? I can accept this as perhaps the next step in the process. So if you think it's needed, hey, you got my support.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not against, doing a thorough study, not against getting the results of that. What I am concerned about is that this is going to delay us doing anything this year for our budget, right, to help compensation across the board. And I know tonight's discussion is about approving the study itself. And again, I'll support the study, realize the importance of it. But what I want to be careful of is that we don't do that in deference and not get back on the budget cycle here and do what we need to do this year to keep our compensation up.
Absolutely, and if I could just maybe quickly respond to that. The plan is that we would still do some sort of ECI adjustment at the beginning of the year to keep us pace with inflation. And I think that it's prudent to do the study and complete the study because it'll give us our best opportunity to fix this the right way.
But we all know what the bottom line is going to be, dollars.
Yes, and I guess what I wanted to say is that, we are moving as quickly as we can. In fact, we fast-tracked this process. I believe we turned around the RFP and the review of the RFP and bringing it to the council in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It's usually a 3-month process. So we got the foot on the gas to get this done. I don't want to delay this in any longer than it needs to take. I also want to make sure that we implement this all at once in one fiscal year rather than coming back with some sort of plan to stair-step it in or phase it in over years. I think that just puts us further behind.
Councilmember Dalla.
When did we do the last class income study?
We started it in 2019 and then implemented in 2020.
So we traditionally have done that on a 5-year cadence, right?
Yes, sir, thereabouts. We did the first one in 2015, the second one 2019, 2020, and now here we are looking at an implementation of 2024. So it would be about a 4-year span.
Okay. So and I know we're talking about doing ECI in October. Do you have any ideas on what we're looking at on that in terms of percentages or total dollars that we're going to commit to an ECI versus holding off and waiting for a comp and class study?
So Jessica has developed an estimate right now for the classic comp study. We will wait until we get a little bit closer so we have a more accurate inflation. But it'll be in the neighborhood. I know James has a preliminary.
I'm not sure what he plugged in the budget. If you'll recall, this past year we did a 3% ECI. I don't know if the plan is to do something similar or to try to increase that, but that is what we did. October 1st last year was the 3% across the board ECI for both public safety and non-public safety.
So, I mean, given where we're at, we know what our turnover rate is. We know what our vacancy rate is. We know where the problem areas are at. I don't think we have to wait for a classic comp study to come back to begin addressing that. Yes, we can look at benefits and everything else, but, everything that I've heard, basically it comes down to bottom line dollars on what we're able to pay our employees. And the benefits and some of the other stuff is more secondary. And I think we need to have a good idea on our own, or we can come up with a good idea on our own on where we need to address it, and we need to front load those ECIs for October 1st. And if we're going to do the study, that we come back and use that to fine tune the findings from that. Because, if we're going to pay our employees and give them an increase, we need to do as much as we can, as soon as we can, because this has been a chronic issue for years. And that's how I'd like for us to address it if we're going to do the study.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Councilmember Whitaker.
I was just gonna, it was something I was gonna bring up, I guess, later and make a request, but is it possible, since we're talking about it now, you've had some good ideas when we've met with the just up budget in general and your perception of where we are as a city in certain departments. You just also mentioned that the police department has a higher turnover rate than all the other departments. So is it possible we could do, I don't have a problem with the, I don't know, the study. It seems like a lot of money to keep studying things, and it seems like it doesn't last us very long, or like the last one didn't seem to be implemented and have much of an positive. I mean, it was positive, but it just wasn't enough or as accurate as we, should have gotten it. So is it possible that we could have a discussion? I know we've got our budget retreat coming up, but could we have a specific discussion? I guess I'm asking for a workshop, but I'm talking about it in this because we're having this conversation about, let's just say, public safety in advance of our budget retreat so that we can focus a little bit more on places that are of utmost importance to the city and make sure that going into, addressing things across the board with ECI in this upcoming budget is good, but if we do have problems out there, I am concerned, as some of the other members are, that waiting for this study and then we got to discuss it, and even if we're fast tracking it, it doesn't feel fast enough. If this is a problem that we've seen for several years, when you talk about public safety, I just think we should kind of elevate the urgency a bit. So that would just be my request, that if we could, you could discuss maybe an idea like, I don't know, plug the hole for the time being until we get the results, and then whatever we've done to kind of maintain or help, we'll fine tune it based on what the results of the study are. But I don't think that we're gonna overshoot if we try to do something in the meantime before we have the official results of the study.
I would just clarify that the highest rate of turnover is in EMS. It's significantly high, but they're fully staffed, but the rate of turnover of employees, we're pretty much the training ground for everybody around here for EMS. The highest vacancy rate right now, I think, is in engineering. It's about 30%. It's a much smaller department, right, but it's also a critical area. We catch a lot of criticism for not being able to complete our review processes quickly. It's because, largely, it's because we just don't have the staff to handle the workload, along with everything else that they do in that department. And police is another critical area. So I think the need is in a lot of different areas in the city. I'm hesitant to say we're going to adjust one area and not another. I'm not opposed to doing some sort of stopgap measure on October 1st and then a couple of months later fully implement the rest of the program. I do recommend that we take the appropriate action to address the entire city, because we do have to provide resources across the board in terms of what we do. And the market's going to show us where we're behind, and it'll address those rates. So there are areas where we have a lot of difficulty recruiting and retaining. May not be as visible as, say, public safety, but they're still just as important in a lot of ways.
So you mentioned EMS. Isn't that an enterprise fund? So doesn't it fund itself somewhat?
It's an enterprise fund in the definition of the fund structure. It is funded by other cities, their contributions to it from their general fund, along with the general fund of the city of Schertz, but then it also has an additional revenue stream of what we get from the insurance carriers. So there's a good component of it that still comes from property taxes. And also the legislature just passed a bill, I believe the governor signed it today, that doesn't allow us to balance bills. So we may get a little bit more from the insurance companies, or it may go the other way. So it's still a little undetermined. But to that end, the money will be there, but we do need to make sure we're paying them the right amounts.
And I will say, just because I'm more familiar with kind of the EMS situation in terms of staffing and pay, I know that operationally they're looking to down the 24 trucks and go to 12-hour trucks. And so with that will require more staff. So they're trying to balance the need between bringing on more staff, which is critical to moving to the 12-hour trucks, versus increasing the pay. So I know, again, those competing interests there in some departments in particular between staffing, being able to hire more folks and paying current employees.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Thank you again. Yeah, this whole discussion leads to the fact that we need a class and comp study. Very, very simple. And I get that 100%, and I know that that's what this discussion is supposed to be on. But we keep varying off because we all see that we have issues. We all know that we have issues. And I know, for one, I feel like we're behind the power curve for this year at this point. As a council, we normally have got at least one full day budget retreat done by now. Got that input from the staff, got that input. We don't have all the answers yet, but we've had all the working input to start making that plan. And waiting until August to hear that is very late in the budget plan. And again, we all know that there's issues out there across the board. We all want to do something about it.
Well, Mayor Pro Tem Brown had a very good point. This is just about the comp study, but I think this council has a little more that they need to do during the budget portion of our duties here. Is that we have to decide when we're coming down to our budget meeting. Is from what I hear, I heard two different types of how we're going to do this. First, are we going to implement an ECI in October and then come back with what the comp study came and address that in January? So that's one way that we can do it. Or the other way I heard is that we can do a ECI in October plus add a little more where we know the issues are and then come back and see whether or not the comp study needs to increase just a little more or whatever it might be. Like they said, plug the hole in October, something like that. But the issue is that we have a lot of work to do during this budget retreat, how we're going to address it, how we're going to implement it. And I think we'll have better numbers at that point. But the issue right now is this comp study. We need to know exactly where we're at. And that we won't know that until January. But we can surely budget and make appropriations for that potential increase that we might have to include. Because as our residents know, everything that we budget, it's spent for. It's already allocated. So we can't go back and add more money. So in our budget retreat, we'll have to make that decision. How much are we going to put in that bucket?
Just to clarify, in case there's any confusion, that we're anticipating results of the study late October, early November, with bringing it back for approval in the council in December. If we have to have a special meeting to even fast track that and get it implemented and get it on people's paychecks sooner, we can do that. We're not going to get the results in January and then look at February, March. This is at the latest January 1st.
January, the implementation with the new ones.
Where it's hitting people's paychecks.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right.
But Mayor, can I just say one more thing?
Yes, go ahead.
I appreciate the acknowledgement that this is a high priority and this is a critical need for the city. I think we can, as staff, we'll figure out a way to get there.
And those numbers will be given to us in the budget retreat.
Yes, sir.
We have some numbers that are kind of
Okay.
scary, but
Yeah.
yes, sir, we'll give them to you.
All right. Councilmember Hayward.
I'm gonna try to get through this. I'm just concerned that as we're all talking about a stopgap, and I know we're talking about compensation, but if we're not gonna implement it until later, I'm just concerned that that doesn't do anything in the interim to maybe put a pause on the turnover, because we keep turning over and turning over. Not only to me am I looking at the salary that we're paying, but every time we turn over, we're turning over and in-processing people. So now with that in-processing, and I know PD and our first responders are probably a different type of processing, but I know that a couple of years ago when I asked what does that in-processing look like, it's like $6,000 an employee. With PD and first responders, it's probably a lot higher. So we're still losing money because every time we turn over someone, we have to in-process somebody else, and it's costing the city money every time we do that. Is there any way to kind of do it, as we're all saying, a temporary stopgap, looking at the numbers? I know for some, I guess with first responders, we can see what the surrounding cities are paying and what people are getting. And for engineers, we kind of have an idea. I mean, I know every department needs something, but we've got to stop the bleeding, because if we keep becoming the training ground, we never get the experience, the people that we need for the residents to know that they're in good hands with whatever is going on in the city, because all we have is new people. And that's my biggest concern.
Okay, Mayor, if the council would like, I mean, we could bring back a recommendation before the beginning of next fiscal year to fill the gap, possibly an ECI or something. We can bring it in sooner than next fiscal year if the council believes that it's that critical.
Well, compensation is always critical, and having our staff provide the services is very critical. But the budget hasn't been already allocated. We have to find out exactly where the numbers are at this point. What's coming in? What is the projected amount? Implementing it October 1st is something that we can actually do. I just not comfortable providing the funds right now without knowing exactly where we're going to stand and what the budget rate is going to be, the tax rate. And like you said, this council knows it is critical, and I just hope our staff realizes that we're trying to address it, but doing it at this time, I'm just not comfortable with it.
Mayor, if I may also, one of the things that obviously council will have to ultimately decide is, because this will drive the numbers, is what do we want our market position to be? Previously, we have shot below average and, it still had a hefty price tag. But if we're looking to be, the 50th percentile or average or even above that, it's going to drive the cost way up. So again, to a certain extent, we can look at the numbers and see, what can we do, and ultimately where do we want to be in the market compared to other cities around us.
Yeah. That's why I say, the budget retreat is going to be very critical to address this. And I think having those numbers will help this council make that decision. We know the decision is going to be to increase it, but at what point? At what risk do we put our city in? And that's my biggest concern. Councilmember Hayward?
Mayor, I don't think we were saying we need to do something like today. I think all of us were saying we know that we don't want to wait till January for something to be implemented. We want something done sooner than January. We weren't saying they have to go and come back and bring something tomorrow. I think as we were talking, we all know that it's critical, but we're not saying act right now. We just don't want it to wait so that we don't have issues. So once we have the budget, we see where things are. Maybe they can do the ECI to kind of do a stopgap and then implement the rest. I think that's where we were all kind of going with, not saying they have to do something tomorrow.
All right, Councilmember Dalla?
I think Jessica brought up a good point on where we want to be in the market. And I think we probably would need to have a discussion about that as a workshop even before the budget meeting. And that way we're talking about it publicly so everybody can see where we're thinking, where we want to go. And let's give staff some directive on the policy on where we want to be on pay scale, so that way it can help you guys as you develop the budget.
And I'll just reiterate what I said at the March 28th meeting, and I remember I gave you guys a couple of pages out of the book Drive by Daniel Pink, and it talked about compensation and external equity compared to the market. And I would ideally like us to be over 50%, at least at the 51st, 52nd percentile. Last time they were at 38%, and they shot for 41 or 42, 47%. It's my belief that we need to be just a little bit ahead of the market. Not greatly ahead of the market, but a step ahead of the market.
All right, I think the issue is the compensation study. All the other stuff, we're going to have to address at a different council meeting or a workshop. So at this point, do I have a motion to approve ER 52?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made by Councilmember Hayward and second by Councilmember Watson. Am I correct, or was it Whitaker? Whitaker. Okay. See, it all sounds the same from this side. I didn't mean that. Okay, council, any other comments? If you go ahead and record your vote. Okay, all the votes have been cast. If you can go ahead and publish the vote. And the vote is seven ayes, no objection. Motion passes. If you can
Thank
go
you.
ahead and record and confirm the vote.
See y'all soon.
Thank you. All right. Next, we have a workshop discussion on the City Council's electronic voting system. All right. This request was made by Councilmember Scagliola, so I will open the floor with Councilmember Scagliola's comments.
Yeah, let me state my concerns, and then y'all can beat up on me later. Hey, I view this issue from a position of transparency and being obvious and being consistent. I absolutely do not like this, and the survey says, approach to figuring out what the council is thinking. You know, in my view, I think a verbal response is necessary. It adds a strength of conviction without ambiguity. Hey, I stand behind my vote. I made it, and I'm willing to defend it. Rather than hiding behind some type of administrative practice of, let's call it obfuscation. Nobody knows what's going on until the survey says, I don't like the idea. Let the council members be heard. We're leaders of the community. The community deserves to hear what we have to say and why. And if you don't like that impassioned plea, how about we review the city charter where it says rules and procedures for accepting votes. It says voting is section D, by the way, rules and procedures. Voting except on procedural matters shall be by a roll call, and the ayes and nays shall be recorded in the minutes. Now, my understanding of a roll call is individuals of the council will be called, and verbally, that individual will give a or yay or a nay, a yes or a no, and then it's recorded for the minutes. That electronic, I'm not technology adverse, I'm really not. But, you know, quite frankly, technology should work for us. We shouldn't have to modify things in order to make it look good. And it doesn't look good, and it doesn't serve the purpose. So there, I've said my piece. I don't like it. Let's go back to the roll call vote as is specified in the charter.
Okay. Council, any comments? Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yeah, I believe that we should always have open discussion. I don't think there's anything about this voting system that limits open discussion. Doesn't, whether it's positive, negative, argumentative, whatever. We can all get our say in with the request to speak button or just speaking up sometimes. So I don't think that that's a problem. And a roll call, call the vote, whether it's an electronic collection or a verbal collection. In some ways, I think the electronic collection, all that does is it's just easier for the city secretary to say who said what when, you know, and it's yes or no. Because at the end of the day, you're either going to vote yes, no, or abstain for whatever reason. But as far as the discussion, absolutely, we need that, just like we just had here. And we had a healthy discussion about a lot of items that weren't just about the resolution. And I think that's good, and I think we've got a good council that does that. So I don't think the electronic voting makes it a bad thing.
Councilmember Whitaker.
I do think it's a little clunky because we're used to the, going down the line and saying it out loud, and it felt good to make, to be able to say what you were, what you favored or didn't favor. However, I will say there's been at least one vote, I don't remember what it was about, but the order in which people voted made a difference, in my opinion, on how we voted, on how the outcome of the vote went. I think this system where you individually vote at the same time eliminates the issue of the order in which the votes are cast, because if there is a very close vote, you could be influenced by another council member's vote, and or I would just say a vote could be made to make a point with the thought process that I'm making a point, but I know it's going to go the other way. And I don't think we should be making points with our votes. I think we should vote the way we want to vote, the way we want the outcome to be. I think this system, everyone voting simultaneously, eliminates any kind of, I don't want to say gamesmanship or whatever, but I think it's actually more transparent because you have the opportunity to have a discussion prior to the vote being cast. You have the opportunity to state your case if you feel like other council members feel differently and you want to share your ideas and maybe make a suggestion that might change their way of thought. But once it's said and done, I think everyone should make their decision independently and not be, I really did not like the way, because it all depended on who made the motion, because that's where the vote started. And then, so the person at the end of the line had an advantage because they already knew who voted what and what the count was. So that's where a situation could be to either make a point with your vote because you know it's not going to impact the final result. So anyway, I didn't like that system. I like this system, even though it feels a little bit clunky, but I think it's transparent. I think it works better, and I think it gets the results that that the citizens should get, which is we each independently make a decision and we go with the majority unless it has to be a supermajority.
Okay. You know, before I recognize Councilmember Scagliola, the other thing that, you know, the electronic vote does is it does provide on YouTube, if you're looking at our council meetings, exactly, you can freeze it and find out exactly how each person voted so that you can get a closer look at it and make your whatever you want to do when you see the vote that's being cast on there and say, well, you know, council member so-and-so, I think I like him because he voted yes and not no. You know, it gives you that opportunity instead of going back to rewinding, find out where did this vote come from? Why was it 4-3? Who voted this? Who voted that? A freeze frame on YouTube gives you exactly more transparency than a roll call confirmation. That's the other thing we did is we speed up our council meetings. That's one less thing we have to do is come out here and see how every person voted on each and every topic we had. And sometimes we had 17 items that we voted on, and each one had to be read. In this situation, the vote is recorded by electronically, and it's annotated in our minutes also. But there's good points and bad points. The bad point was it's something new we had to get used to. That's not the way we ran our council meeting for years, and all of a sudden we have these electronic boxes, and it makes it change, provides a little bit of uneasiness. But overall, I have it's something that we have to adapt. I adapted to it. I'm still trying to. I see other boards and commissions trying to do the same thing, is trying to get comfortable with the new system. But Councilman Scagliola.
Yeah, the thing is, you know, if something is awkward or funky, maybe we should not be doing it. And the contention that, well, you know what, I don't like the way it was done before because if I'm the last person and other people have voted, then I might be swayed. Well, what kind of a lack of conviction is that if you're going to be swayed by other people on the council? You know, if you're prone to vote with a majority to go along to get along, well, yeah, I could see how that would be a problem. But generally speaking, we're individuals here. We make up our own minds. And I have no problem with publishing the results at the end. I think that's great. That's a great use of technology. Like I said, I'm not technology adverse. I just don't like the process going into it. It is awkward, it is cumbersome, and pardon me for saying, you know, it isn't the way we did things, but, you know, it's not the way we did things, and there's a reason we did things the way we did things, because it worked. And this is awkward, and it makes me feel uncomfortable. And you know what? You have to abide by my feelings. Anyway, if you don't want to do that, a roll call vote still, by definition, is a voice vote.
I will yield to our attorney to whether or not roll call confirmation of a vocal vote is what's needed in our rules and procedures.
I haven't researched that. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, I would ask the city secretary since, you know, so, I mean, to me, I agree with what I heard Councilmember Whitaker say, and I think you're going to find differences of opinion on whether or not that qualifies, but I've not looked into that. I showed up and these boxes were here, but I wasn't asked to verify if that was constituted a roll call vote or not, but I'm happy to look into that.
Well, you know, it's any vote is a confirmation. When you record it and we identify it as record and confirm, am I not doing the confirmation at that point?
Sure. But what Councilman Scagliola is referring to is roll call denotes that your name is called and you vote when your name is called. So whether or not this electronic voting system constitutes roll call voting or is the equivalent of roll call voting, I have not looked that up. Not been asked to do so.
That we can do both. I mean, I just don't think it's necessary that we cast our votes and then go down the line and see and verbally say how everybody voted when it's already on the screen. With that,
I'm thinking if you wanted to put it on the screen, then put the screen up there so that people can see how we vote at that moment. You know, instead of doing the survey says at the very end. Ooh, what a surprise. That's, you know, I'd be willing to do that.
Okay. Councilmember Hayward.
When you think about it, this is how they vote in Austin. It's electronic. You press a button. They even have people go press a button for them if they're not at their desk. So we're pressing a button and people get to see it. I don't think that, and I think when roll call was instituted was based on something that happened in the past on council when there was an issue with the vote. And that's why it became a roll call vote. I don't think that it's something that's, a vote is a vote is a vote. Whether you say aye and you do down the line or we cast a vote, we're casting a vote.
Well, one other thing, this is for our attorney here, is you mentioned that this is the mayor's meeting. The agenda is provided. I run the meeting, so what position do I have in saying this is the way we're going to do it, or versus how we?
So, Councilmember Scagliola mentioned that it's a provision in the charter. So if it is a charter provision, then none of us have the ability to just disregard the charter provision, not even the mayor. So if the charter says we vote a particular way, then that's the way we vote. I think the real question is whether or not this constitutes, under the common understanding of what is a roll call vote. And happy to look into that. Haven't been asked to do so.
Yeah, let's see whether or not it's in our charter. Our charter is different than our rules and procedures, and see which way. The consensus I'm getting is that the majority of this council is okay with the new electronic process. It's certainly not picking on the old guy, but you know. So let's take a closer look on our charter. If it's in our charter, it's different. Then we will probably have to go electronically and then do a roll call after that. If it's not in our charter, if it's in our rules and procedures, then we'll have to address that in our rules and procedures and make the adjustments there too.
Well, not necessarily, Mayor. So yes, we need to verify in the charter, but I think more importantly, we need to see if there's anything out there definitively that states whether or not you can do roll call electronically. I mean, I really think that's the question in any of this, and I suspect you can, but again, I haven't looked at it.
Okay. All right, until we get clarification, I don't think we're going to make any further adjustments. So we'll keep it on the back burner, and we'll bring it up when we get our answers on this one. So there's no, at this point, no vote is required until we get clarification. All right, so we'll move on to item number 12. All right. The master calendar has been updated to reflect the city council meetings on the first and the third Tuesday of the month in accordance with the approval of the ordinance 23-M11. Additional meetings were added due to cancellations necessity by holidays or special events such as National Night Out and the general election. So this is open for discussion. Any questions concerning the master calendar that was provided to council? I see no one has any questions or concerns, so I think the adoption of the master calendar has been accepted. All right. We'll move on to requests and announcements. Council, any possible updates or information requested from staff? Councilmember Scagliola.
Yeah, just wondering when we're going to discuss the charter committee selection process. I don't know if we need to have an agenda item for that or just basic information.
No, it will be a discussion item.
Okay.
A workshop with a possible action at that point.
I'm hoping we can at least seat a committee before the end of, or before voting. But anyway, in November.
Okay.
I believe the city secretary is together as well.
Okay, any possible items council would like to place on the future agenda? Councilmember Whitaker.
I would like to put a workshop on there to, I know we're going to have the budget retreat on the 4th of August, but if we could just have I don't think you can talk about it enough. I think we had lots of discussion here, so there's a lot of concerns. Just hit the topic a little bit on maybe some suggestion on some things that we're going to have to make a decision on at the budget retreat, or at least process a little bit more at the budget retreat, but just a preliminary discussion on which departments need a little bit more attention and some suggestions as to how we can do that being implemented in this upcoming budget, but before the class and comp study is complete.
Okay, Councilmember Dahlen.
So I kind of like to, I was going to ask a similar thing, that kind of expand that a little bit and look at having that discussion on policy on where we want to be on the pay scale and the potential financial ramification costs on that, not exact numbers, but just some back of the envelope scratching and what's the difference between where we're at 47% versus 50% versus 52 or whatever. And if we could, ideally, as a personal note, I'd like to have that on the meeting on the 18th, as I will be in California for the meeting on July 18th. I will be in California for the meeting on the 11th.
I don't know that that's possible.
If we can, great.
Yeah, I'd have to defer to Jessica, but I don't believe that'll be possible to pull those data together in time for that.
So
we can try. We can definitely try. Well, just to make sure I'm clear as to what's being, I can get with you guys individually and understand. In terms of hard numbers, I mean, to be very honest, that's what the study is intended to do. What's being suggested would entail us going out and doing mini studies, and well, yours is different in terms of positioning ourselves 47%, 51%. We don't know what the market is yet, so it's hard to compare ourselves to a market that we're not aware of.
Ask your employees, they do.
Well, okay. We'll see, we'll work on that. Okay. Any other Any future agenda items from any other staff members? Okay, none. Let's go ahead. Announcements by our council members. Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Nothing tonight, sir.
Councilmember Davis.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of attending the Housing Authority Board meeting last month. Council.
Councilmember Watson.
Nothing at this time.
Councilmember Whitaker.
Nothing.
Councilmember Dalla.
Nothing.
Councilmember Scanliola.
Yeah, I had a wonderful Father's Day, thanks to HEB and my lobster, and went to the Chamber luncheon today. Keynote speaker was a lawyer who talked about some of the obstacles that businesses have to put up with. Hey, it was eye-opening, it really was, and hats off to our business community for managing and navigating those challenges. That's all I have, sir.
Okay. Councilmember Hayward.
Yes, I attended, as Steve said, the legislative update, and I was so proud of my city. I want to beat my chest because we had full force of the city of Schertz at the legislative update, and a couple of our sister cities, they just had their council members. So it was a good event. It was well worth going. There's a lot of changes. Some of the bills the governor vetoed, but one of the ones that really passed that it's going to cause us some problem is H-Bill 2127, which is the preemptive bill. So it pretty much kind of does away with home rule in that some of the ways that it operates. And so we need to keep a watch on that, and it's going to probably end up in litigation, and the courts will have to figure out what's going on, but it's not a very good bill for the cities. And then I attended the chamber luncheon, and it was pretty good. Thanks. That's all.
All right. The time is 7:31. We stand adjourned.